Okay, let's dive in and meet a literary character who is just timeless. He reveals a dark and, yeah, an uncomfortably familiar part of human nature. This is Dostoevsky's Bully.
But before we get into 19th century Russian literature, we're going to start with something a little closer to home, an experience that I'm willing to bet we've all had at some point.
I mean, really think about that for a second. That person who seems to find this simple, uncomplicated joy in seeing someone else humiliated. There's no grand scheme, no complex motive. It's just the raw pleasure of making another person feel small.
And it looks like this, right? It's these little everyday acts of cruelty that are just so recognizable. This isn't supervillain stuff, it's that snigger you hear just as you're walking away. It's being deliberately left out of the group chat. Or, that coworker who just pounces the second they sense a weakness in a meeting. And that's why it stings so much, because it is personal.
Okay, so with that in our minds, let's meet the perfect literary specimen of this very archetype. He's a minor character from Fyodor Dostoevsky's amazing novella, Notes from Underground, and his name is Ferfichkin.
You know what's so brilliant? Dostoevsky gives this guy almost no backstory, no complex history. And why? Because he doesn't need to. This one physical description, it tells you everything you need to know. You can just picture it, a mouth practically built for sneering. So here's the absolute key to understanding him. Ferfichkin isn't just another guy at the dinner party. He's more like a psychological function. He's the walking, talking embodiment to the main character's own corrosive spite, only it's turned outward. There's no self-reflection, no philosophical hand-wringing. He's just pure, uncut nastiness. So, what's his role in this little social drama? Well, think of him as the id of the group. In this super tense get-together, he's the one who gets to voice all the raw, unfiltered aggression that the other, more civilized characters are feeling but are too afraid to say out loud. He is the voice of their collective contempt.
So what really makes a character like this tick? Let's peel back the layers and do a little anatomy of a bully, looking at him on both an emotional and a psychological level. See, lots of people can be cruel with, subtlety. A backhanded compliment here, a passive-aggressive comment there. Not this guy. Ferfichkin's attacks are direct, they are gleeful, and honestly, they're almost childish in how simple they are. He enjoys it openly. There's no mask at all.
And this is so interesting because it shows you that cruelty has different flavors, right? You've got Zverkov, the man of the hour, who hurts people with just his effortless superiority. Then you have Simonov, who does it with cold, silent judgment. But Ferfichkin, he's all about the blunt force of a sneer. He is the group's attack dart.
And psychologically, this is what he is. He's the id. That's that primal, instinctual part of our mind, that raw desire to dominate that society normally teaches us to keep on a leash. He's the part that never learned that social rule about not kicking someone when they're down. In fact, for him, that's exactly when kicking is the most fun.
But Ferfichkin is about more than just one guy's psychology. His role in the story builds into something much, much bigger. He becomes a symbol for how cruelty actually operates inside a group.
He's the snarling front line of the mob. He's the one who gives voice to that silent contempt the normal world so often has for people who are maybe a little too sensitive, a little too different. People just like our protagonist, the underground man. Ferfichkin is there to enforce the group's harsh judgment.
And this, right here, is what is so chillingly true. It really gets to the banality of everyday cruelty. You don't need some evil genius, some grand villain, to absolutely wreck someone's evening, or maybe even their life. All it takes is one ordinary person who's enjoying a tiny little taste of power over someone else.
All right, let's bring it all home, because this is the part where a character from a book written over 150 years ago suddenly becomes uncomfortably modern and deeply, deeply personal.
And honestly, this is the takeaway that should make all of us squirm a little bit. It's easy to point out the Ferfichkin in other people. That's the simple part. The real challenge, the real gut punch, is recognizing those moments when we've been the one with that little triumphant laugh at someone else's expense, when we felt that tiny, intoxicating rush of power.
What Dostoevsky shows us so brilliantly is this terrifying through line. The core behavior, it's identical. It doesn't matter if it's a kid in the schoolyard who knows just where to poke, a colleague who senses weakness in a meeting, or some petty tyrant throughout history. It is the exact same impulse to dominate and humiliate.
And so that's the final thought to leave you with. A question that starts with this minor character in a Russian novella but ends up being about, well, all of us. The stage might get bigger, and the consequences might get a whole lot more severe.
But that basic, gleeful delight in someone else's pain, does that ever really change?